continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Call. Blake Morrison adjusted his Armani tie as he stepped into his hotel suite overlooking downtown Chicago. The merger negotiations had run 12 hours straight, but the $200 million deal was finally sealed. His construction empire, Morrison Holdings, had just acquired another major competitor. At 38, Blake had built his company from a single bulldozer into the largest private construction firm on the West Coast. He poured himself a scotch and video called home to Seattle. The screen connected, showing his 4-year-old daughter Chloe's face, but something was immediately wrong. Her usual bright smile was replaced by a subdued expression, her blue eyes lacking their typical sparkle. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered, barely audible. "Hey there, Princess. Are you okay? You seem quiet." "I'm okay," Chloe said faintly, glancing away from the camera. Blake's paternal instincts flared. Behind Chloe, he could see his wife Candace standing motionless, staring down at their daughter with an expression he'd never seen before. Cold, almost menacing. Candace's perfectly manicured hands were clenched at her sides, her blonde hair pulled back severely. "Is everything okay there?" Blake asked, his voice sharpening. "Candace?" Candace's head snapped up, her green eyes meeting the camera for just a moment before she looked away. That's when Blake noticed something that made his blood freeze. Chloe's small hand moved subtly, making a gesture Blake had taught her 2 years ago when she was barely speaking. 3 fingers pressed together, thumb touching pinky. It was their secret signal, something he'd shown her to use if she ever felt scared or unsafe and couldn't speak freely. "Everything's fine," Candace said, stepping into view with a forced smile. "Chloe's just tired. Time for bed, sweetie." But Blake caught it, the slight tremor in Candace's voice, the way she positioned herself between Chloe and the camera, and most importantly, the desperate look in his daughter's eyes as she made the sign again before the call ended. Blake stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. In 8 years of marriage, Candace had never shown anything but loving care toward Chloe. She'd given up her marketing career to be a stay-at-home mother, seemingly devoted to their family. But that look, that stance, it was territorial, possessive, and threatening. He called back immediately. The phone rang 6 times before Candace answered, her face filling the screen. "Blake, I told you she's sleeping now. I want to see her room." "What? That's ridiculous. You'll wake her up. Show me. Now." Candace's jaw tightened. "I'm not going to." Blake's voice dropped to the tone that made million-dollar contractors nervous. "Show me our daughter's room, or I'm catching the next flight home." Something flickered across Candace's face. Fear, guilt, or calculation. "Fine," she said, but she ended the call. Blake tried calling back repeatedly for the next hour. Each attempt went straight to voicemail. He opened his laptop and checked their home security system. Every camera showed offline or maintenance mode. Their entire house had gone dark. Cameras, door sensors, everything. Either there was a massive system failure, or someone had deliberately disabled it. Blake called his head of security, Miguel Reyes, a former Navy SEAL who handled sensitive matters for Morrison Holdings. "Miguel, I need you to do a welfare check on my family. Something's wrong. I'll head over now, boss. What should I be looking for?" "I don't know yet. But if anyone tries to stop you from seeing Chloe, call the police first, then call me." Blake spent the next 2 hours pacing his hotel room, checking his phone obsessively. When Miguel finally called back, his voice was grim. "Boss, I went to the house." Candace answered the door, said everything was fine, but she wouldn't let me see Chloe. Said she was sleeping and I disturb her. When I insisted, she threatened to call the police on me for harassment. "What about the security system?" She claimed it was being serviced. But here's the thing. I saw a car parked around the corner. Black BMW, tinted windows. When I walked toward it, it drove off quickly. Blake's grip tightened on the phone. "Get the license plate?" "Partial. I'm running it now. Stay on the house tonight. If that car comes back, I want to know immediately." After hanging up, Blake booked the earliest flight to Seattle. But as he packed, his mind churned through possibilities. Candace's behavior was completely out of character, unless unless he'd never really known her at all. He'd met Candace at a charity gala 7 years ago. She was beautiful, charming, and seemed to understand his driven nature. They'd married within a year, and Chloe was born 18 months later. Candace had been the perfect wife, supportive during his company's expansion, gracious at business dinners, and apparently devoted to their daughter. But now, replaying their relationship in his mind, Blake began noticing gaps. Candace's vague answers about her past before they met. Her reluctance to discuss her family, claiming they were estranged. The way she sometimes disappeared for hours, claiming shopping trips or spa visits, but returning with nothing to show for it. Blake opened his safe and removed a thick folder, the background check he'd commissioned on Candace before their engagement. At the time, it had seemed paranoid, but his lawyers had insisted. The report had been clean. No criminal history, good credit, normal social media presence. But it had also been remarkably sparse on details before her 24th birthday. Now, with his daughter potentially in danger, that gap seemed ominous. His phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. Car is back. Same BMW. Driver is watching the house. Blake checked his watch. His flight wasn't for 6 hours, but every minute felt like a lifetime. He called his pilot. Get the jet ready. I need to be in Seattle in 3 hours. Sir, it's nearly midnight. We'll need to. I don't care what it costs or what permits you need. Get me home. As Blake waited for the car to the airport, he pulled up Candace's recent credit card statements on his phone. The charges were routine except for one thing. Large cash withdrawals over the past month, totaling nearly $15,000. Cash meant no electronic trail, no way to track how the money was being spent. Blake's jaw clenched. Whatever was happening at his house, it had been planned. The disabled security system, the mysterious car, the cash withdrawals, and somehow his 4-year-old daughter was caught in the middle of it. But Blake Morrison hadn't built a construction empire by backing down from fights. He'd learned early that in business and in life, you either crush your enemies completely, or they eventually crushed you. By the time his plane took off, Blake had made a decision. Whatever threat was facing his family, whoever was responsible, he would eliminate it with the same ruthless efficiency he'd used to destroy business competitors. And if Candace was involved, if his wife had betrayed him and endangered their daughter, she would learn why Blake Morrison's enemies either fled the state or ended up in bankruptcy court. Some betrayals could never be forgiven. Chapter 2. The Revelation. Blake's private jet touched down at Boeing Field at 4:17 a.m. Miguel met him on the tarmac with a grim expression and a coffee that Blake ignored. Status report, Blake demanded as they walked to Miguel's armored SUV. The BMW left around 2 a.m. I followed it to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel downtown. Driver went to the parking garage, but I lost him. No visual on who it was. What about Candace? House has been quiet. All lights went off around midnight. But boss, Miguel hesitated. I think you should see this. He handed Blake a tablet showing traffic camera footage from earlier that evening. The timestamp read 8:43 p.m., just after Blake's disturbing video call. Watch the black BMW, Miguel said. Blake studied the screen. The BMW was leaving his neighborhood, heading toward downtown Seattle. As it passed under a streetlight, the camera caught a clear view through the windshield. The driver was Candace. Blake's expression hardened. She left Chloe alone? Gets worse. Watch this. Miguel swiped to another camera feed, this one from the hotel's valet station. The BMW pulled up, and Candace stepped out wearing a dress Blake had never seen, something expensive and revealing. But she wasn't alone. A man emerged from the passenger side. Tall, muscular with dark hair and the kind of physique that screamed personal trainer or gym rat. He moved with casual confidence as he handed the valet the keys, then placed his hand possessively on Candace's lower back as they entered the hotel. Blake felt something cold settle in his chest. How long were they inside? 4 hours. Left separately around 1 a.m. Different cars. You get an ID on it? Miguel nodded. Facial recognition hit a match. Tyler Hendricks, age 31. Owns a boutique fitness studio called Elite Form. Divorced, no kids, clean record except for a DUI 3 years ago. Blake studied the footage again, noting the familiarity between Candace and Tyler. This wasn't a first meeting. They moved together like a couple who'd been intimate for months, maybe longer. "How long has this been going on?" Blake asked quietly. "I'm checking. But boss, there's something else. I found out why your security system went down." Miguel pulled up another screen showing Blake's home security company's maintenance logs. "Someone called yesterday afternoon claiming to be you, saying you wanted the system temporarily disabled for privacy reasons during a family matter. They had your account information, your social security number, everything needed to authenticate. Candace had access to all that information." "Yes, sir. She planned this." Blake stared at the footage of his wife entering a hotel with another man while their 4-year-old daughter was home alone. The betrayal cut deep, but what enraged him more was the calculated nature of it. Candace hadn't just cheated. She'd deliberately left Chloe vulnerable to enable her affair. "Take me home," Blake said. "I want to see my daughter." The drive to his Bellevue mansion took 20 minutes. Blake's neighborhood was one of the most exclusive in the Seattle area, with homes starting at $3 million. His own house, a 12,000-square-foot modern fortress, sat on 5 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. He designed it himself, with state-of-the-art security, a safe room, and clear sight lines from every window, all of which Candace had circumvented with a simple phone call. Blake used his key to enter quietly through the front door. The house was silent, except for the grandfather clock in the foyer, chiming 5 a.m. He climbed the stairs to Chloe's room, his footsteps muffled by Persian rugs. Chloe's door was slightly ajar. Blake pushed it open and saw his daughter sleeping peacefully in her princess-themed bed, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. She looked small and vulnerable in the large room, and Blake felt his rage intensify. How could Candace have left her alone? He checked on her for several minutes, ensuring she was truly safe, then made his way to the master bedroom. Candace was there, apparently asleep, her blonde hair spread across the pillow. But Blake noticed details that confirmed his suspicions. A slight smear of makeup she'd missed while cleaning up, the faint scent of cologne that wasn't his, and her phone charging face down on the nightstand. Blake didn't wake her. Instead, he went to his home office and began making calls. First, he contacted his attorney, David Kim, one of Seattle's most ruthless divorce lawyers. "David, I need you at my office in 2 hours. Family emergency." "Blake, it's 5 a.m. What's—" "My wife is having an affair. I have proof. I want to discuss options before she knows I'm back in town." Next, he called his private investigator, Lisa Park, who'd worked for Morrison Holdings for 5 years handling background checks and corporate espionage. "Lisa, I need a complete workup on my wife. Everything: financial records, phone logs, social media, travel history. Go back 2 years. Blake, is everything okay?" "No. And I need the same investigation on a Tyler Hendricks. Owns Elite Form Fitness Studio. I want to know everything about him. Business records, personal life, who he's connected to. How fast do you need this?" By noon today, Blake's third call was to his business partner and CFO, Rick Castellanos. Rick had been with Morrison Holdings since the beginning and was one of the few people Blake trusted completely. "Rick, clear my schedule for the next week. Family situation that requires my full attention. The Portland project meeting is—" "Cancel it. Everything non-critical gets postponed." Blake spent the next hour going through financial records on his computer. What he found painted a clear picture of betrayal. The cash withdrawals weren't random. They followed a pattern. Every Tuesday and Friday for the past 3 months, Candace had withdrawn $500 to $1,000 in cash. Tuesdays and Fridays were when Blake typically worked late at the office or traveled for business. He cross-referenced the dates with his calendar and travel schedule. Every single withdrawal corresponded with a day when he was away from home for extended periods. But the financial betrayal went deeper. Blake discovered that Candace had opened a separate credit card account he wasn't aware of. The statements, which she'd been hiding, showed charges at expensive restaurants, boutique hotels, and luxury clothing stores. The total debt was approaching $50,000. More damning was a series of charges at Elite Form, Tyler's fitness studio. The charges weren't for standard personal training sessions. They were 4 private consultation sessions that cost $300 each and occurred twice weekly for the past 4 months. Blake pulled up Elite Form's website. The studio offered high-end personal training, nutrition consulting, and lifestyle coaching for wealthy clients. Tyler's bio described him as a former college athlete who specialized in transformative fitness experiences for discerning clientele. The photos showed a man who was everything Blake wasn't. Young, conventionally handsome in a generic way, with the kind of muscles that came from spending entire days in a gym rather than building an empire. Blake felt nothing but contempt for the type of man who made a living flattering bored housewives. At 7 a.m., Blake heard movement upstairs. Candace was awake. He closed his laptop and waited, curious to see how she'd handle his unexpected return. 10 minutes later, Candace appeared in the doorway of his office, wearing a silk robe and a carefully constructed expression of surprise. "Blake, you're home early. I thought you weren't coming back until Thursday." "Change of plans," Blake said evenly. "The deal closed yesterday." Candace stepped into the office, and Blake noticed she kept her distance, staying near the door. "How wonderful. I know how important that merger was to you." "Where did you go last night, Candace?" The question hung in the air. Blake watched his wife's face carefully, looking for tells. Her eyes flickered almost imperceptibly, a micro-expression that betrayed her guilt. "Last night, I was here with Chloe. We had dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed early. I called around 10 p.m. You didn't answer. My phone was charging upstairs. I must have missed it." Blake stood up slowly, his 6'3" frame towering over his wife. "That's interesting, because I have traffic camera footage of you leaving the house at 8:43 p.m. in your BMW. Candace's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "That's impossible. You were at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel with Tyler Hendricks until 1 a.m. The silence stretched between them. Blake watched as various emotions played across Candace's face. Shock, fear, calculation, and finally, a cold defiance he'd never seen before. "How long have you been having me followed?" she asked. "I haven't. Until yesterday, I trusted my wife." "Then how?" "Because when someone threatens my daughter, I respond accordingly." Candace's eyes narrowed. "Threatens Chloe? What are you talking about?" "The hand signal, Candace. She made our emergency signal during the video call. She was scared of something or someone." For the first time, Candace looked genuinely confused. "What hand signal?" Blake studied her face. Either she was an exceptional actress, or she truly didn't know about the signal he'd taught Chloe. But that didn't absolve her of leaving their daughter alone to meet her lover. "You left a 4-year-old child alone for 4 hours so you could cheat on your husband." "Blake, I can explain." "Don't." Blake's voice cut through her words like a blade. "I know about the cash withdrawals, the secret credit card, the private consultation sessions with Tyler. I know you disabled our security system to cover your tracks." Candace straightened, and Blake saw a flash of the person she really was beneath the mask of the devoted wife and mother. "So what now?" she asked. "You're going to divorce me? Take Chloe away from me?" "That depends entirely on what you do next." "Meaning?" Blake walked around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her. "Meaning you're going to tell me everything. How long this has been going on, what Tyler Hendricks really wants, and why my daughter was terrified yesterday. And if I don't," Blake's smile was cold and dangerous, "then you'll discover why people who cross Blake Morrison tend to lose everything they value." Candace stared at him for a long moment, then laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "You think you know everything, don't you? But you have no idea what you've stumbled into, Blake. Tyler isn't just some trainer I'm sleeping with." "Then enlighten me." "He's Chloe's biological father." The words hit Blake like a physical blow. He felt the world tilt slightly, his carefully controlled expression faltering for just a moment. "That's impossible. Chloe is my daughter." "Your daughter," Candace said with venom, "has never had a DNA test. And Tyler has been very patient about claiming what's his." Blake stared at the woman he'd thought he knew, seeing a stranger's face looking back at him. But even as the revelation shattered his world, his mind was already adapting, calculating, planning. If Candace thought this bombshell would destroy him, she'd badly underestimated who she was dealing with. Blake Morrison had built his empire by turning disasters into opportunities. And this betrayal, this unforgivable, calculated destruction of his family, would be no different. By the time he was finished, Candace and Tyler would learn that some wars are won not by who strikes first, but by who strikes last. Chapter 3. The Investigation. Blake maintained his composure as Candace's words echoed in his mind. Tyler has been very patient about claiming what's his. The implication was clear. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated plan to destroy his family and steal his daughter. "Get out," Blake said quietly. "Blake, we need to talk about. Get out of my office. Now." Candace must have recognized something lethal in his tone because she backed toward the door. "This doesn't have to be ugly, Blake. Tyler and I, we can work something out. Financial arrangements that benefit everyone." Blake's hands clenched into fists. They weren't just planning to take Chloe. They were planning to extort him for the privilege. "You have 30 seconds to leave this room before I do something we'll both regret." Candace fled, her footsteps rapid on the hardwood floors. Blake heard her bedroom door slam upstairs. He sat back down at his desk and forced himself to think logically. If Tyler Hendricks truly believed he was Chloe's biological father, that changed everything. This wasn't a simple affair. It was a long-term strategy to claim his daughter and likely his wealth. Blake pulled up his calendar from 4 years ago, around the time Chloe would have been conceived. He and Candace had been trying for a baby for months. There had been fertility consultations, carefully tracked ovulation cycles, and what he'd thought was mutual excitement about starting a family. Now he wondered if Candace had been scheduling her affair around those same cycles. His phone rang. Lisa Park, his private investigator. "Blake, I've got preliminary findings on Tyler Hendricks. You're not going to like this. Tell me." Elite Form Fitness Studio is bleeding money. Hendricks is 3 months behind on rent, has defaulted on equipment loans, and owes about $80,000 in various debts. The business is essentially bankrupt. Blake felt a piece of the puzzle click into place. So he needs money. Gets worse. I dug into his personal history. Hendricks has a pattern of targeting wealthy older women. His ex-wife divorced him after catching him with a client, a real estate heiress who ended up giving him $50,000 before her family intervened. A con man. Professional grade. But here's the interesting part. I found social media photos of him from 5 years ago. Guess where he was working? Blake waited. The gym where your wife had her membership. Cascade Fitness on Mercer Island. They were connected before you even knew she was pregnant. The betrayal went even deeper than Blake had imagined. Candace hadn't fallen for Tyler during a moment of weakness. She'd been planning this deception for years. What about her financial records? Still compiling, but I found something immediate. 3 weeks ago, Candace consulted with a family law attorney. Patricia Mills, one of the most aggressive divorce lawyers in Seattle, specializes in high-asset divorces where fathers lose custody. Blake's jaw tightened. They're planning to take Chloe. Looks that way. I'll have the complete report by noon. But Blake, if they're claiming Tyler is the biological father, they might have genetic evidence. After hanging up, Blake immediately called David Kim, his attorney. "David, I need an emergency DNA test for Chloe. How quickly can that be arranged? If you have custody consent from both parents, we can have results in 24 hours. But Blake, if you're questioning paternity, we need to discuss the legal implications. Just set it up. I'll handle the consent." Blake's next call was to Dr. Sarah Williams, Chloe's pediatrician and a family friend. "Sarah, I need a favor. Can you come to my house this morning to collect a DNA sample from Chloe? It's for legal purposes." "Blake, is everything okay?" "That's an unusual request. Family situation. I can't explain details, but I need this done quietly and quickly. I could be there in 2 hours." Blake spent the next hour reviewing everything he knew about Tyler Hendricks. He pulled up the man's social media profiles, business records, and credit history. What emerged was a picture of a career predator who specialized in seducing vulnerable women with money. But Tyler had made one critical mistake. He'd targeted Blake Morrison's family. Blake opened his laptop and began making notes for the plan forming in his mind. Tyler wanted to claim Chloe and extort money from him. Blake would give him exactly what he deserved. At 9 a.m., Chloe woke up and came downstairs, still in her pajamas and carrying her stuffed elephant. "Daddy!" She ran to him with genuine joy, and Blake felt his heart clench. Whatever the DNA test revealed, this was his daughter in every way that mattered. "Hey, princess. Did you sleep well?" "Uh-huh. Why are you home?" "Mommy said you were gone for work. I finished early so I could see you. Are you feeling okay? You seemed a little sad yesterday when we talked." Chloe's expression became cautious, and she glanced toward the kitchen where Candace was making coffee. "I'm okay, Daddy." But Blake noticed she stayed close to him, her small hand gripping his shirt. Whatever had happened yesterday, Chloe still felt safer with him than with her mother. Dr. Williams arrived at 11 a.m. with her medical bag and a discreet DNA collection kit. She was a woman in her 50s who'd been treating Chloe since birth. "Uncle Blake needs to make sure you're extra healthy," Dr. Williams explained to Chloe as she swabbed the inside of her cheek. "This is just like the vitamin tests we do sometimes." Chloe cooperated without complaint, trusting Dr. Williams completely. Candace watched from the doorway, her face pale, but saying nothing. After Dr. Williams left with the sample, Blake's phone rang. "Miguel, boss, I got eyes on Tyler Hendricks. He's at his gym, but he's not alone. There's a woman with him. Looks like a lawyer based on the briefcase and business attire. Can you get photos?" "Already done. Sending them now." Blake's phone buzzed with several high-resolution images. The woman was Patricia Mills, the divorce attorney Lisa had mentioned. She and Tyler were sitting in his office, documents spread across the desk between them. Blake forwarded the photos to David Kim with a text. "The opposition is planning their strategy. We need to move faster." At noon, Lisa Park arrived with a thick folder containing her complete investigation. "Blake, this is bigger than just an affair and a paternity claim," she said, spreading documents across his desk. "Tyler Hendricks and Patricia Mills have worked together before." "Explain." 2 years ago, they collaborated on a case involving a tech executive named Robert Chun. Similar situation. Tyler seduced the man's wife, claimed to be the father of their child, and Patricia Mills represented the wife in divorce proceedings. Chun lost half his assets and visitation rights to his son. Blake felt cold fury building in his chest. They're running a con. Professional level. But here's where it gets interesting. Robert Chin's wife eventually figured out what Tyler really was. She tried to back out of the arrangement, return to her husband, reconcile the family. What happened? Lisa's expression was grim. She died in a single-car accident 6 months later. Lost control on a mountain road, no witnesses. The implication hung heavy in the air. Blake stared at the accident report Lisa had obtained. "You think Tyler killed her?" "I think Tyler Hendricks is more dangerous than he appears." "And Blake, there's something else. Candace's phone records show she's been in contact with Patricia Mills for 3 months. This isn't a recent decision. They've been planning this for a long time." Blake studied the phone records, seeing the pattern of calls between his wife and the divorce attorney. The frequency increased over time, culminating in daily conversations over the past 2 weeks. "They're ready to move," Blake said. "I think so. And based on the Chin case, their strategy is straightforward. Claim Tyler is Chloe's father, file for divorce with Patricia's help, destroy your reputation in court, and walk away with your daughter and half your assets." Blake closed the folder and looked at Lisa. "What's Tyler's weak point? His business is failing, he's drowning in debt, and his entire lifestyle depends on finding wealthy women to exploit. He's desperate, which makes him dangerous but also vulnerable. And Candace? She's in love with the idea of Tyler, not the reality. She thinks she's trading up from a workaholic husband to a younger, more attentive man. She has no idea she's just another mark in a confidence game." Blake stood up and walked to his office window, looking out at the grounds where he'd built a playground for Chloe, where she'd taken her first steps, where they'd spent countless hours together. "Lisa, I want you to find everything you can about Robert Chin's wife's accident. If Tyler was involved, there has to be evidence. Blake, what are you planning?" Blake turned back to her, and Lisa saw something in his expression that made her step back. "Tyler Hendricks wants to destroy my family and steal my daughter. Candace wants to betray everything we built together. They think they can manipulate me, extort me, and walk away with my life. And They're about to learn that Blake Morrison doesn't get manipulated. He doesn't get extorted, and he doesn't lose. Blake's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Williams. DNA sample is at the lab. Results in 18 hours. Lisa, I want 24-hour surveillance on both Tyler and Candace. I want to know everywhere they go, everyone they meet, and every move they make. Already arranged. Good. Because in 18 hours, I'll know if Chloe is biologically mine or not. But either way, Tyler Hendricks and my wife are about to discover what happens when someone threatens the things Blake Morrison values most. Blake looked out the window again, where Chloe was playing in the backyard with Candace watching from the patio. From this distance, they looked like a normal family. But Blake now knew the truth. His wife was a traitor, his daughter might not be his biological child, and a con man was planning to steal everything he'd worked for. But Tyler had made one fatal error in judgment. He'd assumed Blake Morrison was just another wealthy mark who could be manipulated and destroyed. He was about to learn the difference between a man who inherited wealth and a man who'd fought for every dollar he'd earned. And that difference would cost Tyler Hendricks everything. Chapter 4. The DNA Results and Discovery. Blake didn't sleep that night. He sat in his home office, surrounded by investigation files, legal documents, and surveillance photos, planning his next moves like a general preparing for war. At 6 a.m., his phone rang. Dr. Williams' voice was professional but sympathetic. Blake, I have the DNA results. And Chloe is not your biological daughter. The words hit harder than Blake had expected, even though he'd been preparing for this possibility. 4 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, first words, Christmas mornings, all built on a lie. Blake, are you there? I'm here. Email me the complete report. I'm sorry, Blake. I know how much Chloe means to you. After hanging up, Blake stared at the photo on his desk. Him and Chloe at the zoo last month, her laughing as he lifted her onto his shoulders. Biology might say she wasn't his, but every fiber of his being rejected that conclusion. His phone buzzed with Miguel's daily report. Tyler left his apartment at 7 a.m., went to Elite Form. Candace dropped Chloe at preschool, then drove to Starbucks on Pine Street. Patricia Mills was waiting for her. Blake felt the familiar cold anger settle over him. While he was discovering that his entire family was built on deception, his wife was meeting with her divorce attorney, planning how to destroy him in court. He called David Kim. The DNA test confirms Tyler is the biological father. What's our legal position? Complicated, David said grimly. If Candace files for divorce and Tyler petitions for paternity rights, you could lose all custody of Chloe. The courts favor biological parents, especially if they can prove fraud was involved in the original birth certificate. What kind of fraud? If Candace knowingly put your name on the birth certificate when she knew Tyler was the father, that's paternal fraud. It could void any parental rights you might have. Blake felt something dark and cold growing in his chest. They planned this perfectly. It gets worse, Blake. I did some research on Patricia Mills. She's won several high-profile cases involving paternal fraud. Her strategy is always the same. Portray the father as a controlling, absent workaholic who drove the wife into another man's arms. She'll claim Candace only lied about paternity to protect herself and the child from your emotional abuse. Emotional abuse? She'll twist your work schedule, your business trips, your high expectations, everything that made you successful, into evidence of neglect and psychological manipulation. Blake realized the full scope of their plan. They weren't just stealing his daughter and his money. They were going to destroy his reputation and make him the villain in his own betrayal. How long do we have? If they file today, you could be served with papers by tomorrow. Once that happens, temporary custody arrangements go into effect. Chloe could be living with Candace and Tyler within a week. Blake hung up and immediately called Lisa Park. Lisa, I need everything you have on Patricia Mills' previous cases. Every client, every strategy, every weakness. Already working on it. But Blake, I have something more immediate. Miguel's surveillance caught something interesting this morning. What? After Candace met with Patricia Mills, she drove to a Wells Fargo branch in Bellevue. She was inside for 45 minutes and left carrying a large envelope. Safe deposit box. That's my guess. Miguel followed her back home, but she made 2 phone calls on the way. One to Tyler, one to a number I'm still tracking down. Blake thought about the timeline. DNA results confirmed, meeting with divorce attorney, trip to safe deposit box, coordinated phone calls. They were implementing their plan today. I'm coming to your office, Blake told Lisa. I want to see everything we have. Blake drove to Lisa's downtown Seattle office, his mind focused despite the emotional chaos of the past 24 hours. Lisa Park Investigations occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower with views of Elliott Bay. Blake had used Lisa's services for 5 years, and she'd never failed to deliver results. Lisa's conference room was set up like a war room, whiteboards covered with photos, timelines, and connection maps. At the center was a detailed profile of Tyler Hendricks. Tyler isn't just a con man, Lisa explained as Blake studied the information. He's part of a larger operation. Patricia Mills has represented 7 women in the past 3 years who all had relationships with fitness trainers or yoga instructors before filing for divorce. A pattern. More than that, it's systematic. Look at this. Lisa pointed to a timeline showing the 7 cases. Each woman was married to a wealthy man. Each had an affair with a younger fitness professional. Each filed for divorce, claiming paternal fraud or emotional abuse. And each case was handled by Patricia Mills. Blake studied the names and photos. How much money are we talking about? Combined settlements totaling $47 million over 3 years. Patricia Mills takes 30% of all settlements, which means she's earned over $14 million from this scheme. And Tyler's cut? Hard to calculate exactly, but based on his lifestyle upgrades and the timing, I'd estimate he's made about $3 million. Blake felt the pieces clicking together. They're targeting wealthy men specifically. Gets worse. I found the connection between Tyler and Patricia Mills. They're not just business partners, they're romantically involved. Have been for 4 years. Blake stared at the surveillance photos showing Tyler and Patricia Mills in intimate settings, holding hands at dinner, leaving her apartment together, sharing what looked like more than professional conversations. So Candace is just a mark to both of them. Exactly. Tyler seduced her as part of the con, but his real relationship is with Patricia Mills. They're using your wife to destroy your family and steal your wealth. Blake felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Candace thought she was trading her marriage for true love, but she was actually just another victim in a confidence game. Lisa, I want everything on their previous victims. Contact information, case details, settlement amounts, everything. Already compiled. But Blake, there's something else you need to see. Lisa opened another folder containing medical records and accident reports. Remember Robert Chin's wife, who tried to back out of the con? Her death wasn't an accident. I found a witness, a park ranger who saw Tyler Hendricks hiking in the area the day she died. He was supposed to be in Seattle, but his cell phone pinged a tower near the accident site. Blake studied the evidence. He killed her to protect the operation. I think so. And Blake, I'm worried about Candace. If she ever figures out what Tyler really is, if she tries to reconcile with you or back out of the divorce. The implication was clear. Tyler Hendricks had killed before to protect his criminal enterprise, and he wouldn't hesitate to kill again. Blake's phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. Candace just returned home. Tyler's car is in your driveway. Blake felt rage build in his chest. Tyler was in his house, with his daughter, planning to steal everything Blake had worked for. Lisa, I want you to contact Robert Chun and the other victims. I want to know everything about how Tyler operates, how Patricia Mills builds her cases, and what evidence we need to destroy them. What are you planning, Blake? Blake stood up and looked out at the Seattle skyline, the city where he'd built his empire, where he'd thought he had a family, where his enemies now believe they could destroy him. Tyler Hendricks and Patricia Mills have spent years perfecting a system to destroy men like me. They think they understand how to manipulate the legal system, how to turn wives against husbands, how to steal children and wealth. And they're about to learn that Blake Morrison doesn't play by their rules. Blake's phone rang. David Kim. Blake, I just received a call from Patricia Mills' office. They're filing divorce papers this afternoon. Candace is claiming irreconcilable differences, emotional neglect, and seeking full custody based on Tyler's paternity claim. Timeline: you'll be served with papers by 6 p.m. today. Emergency custody hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Blake checked his watch. It was 2 p.m., which gave him less than 4 hours before his world officially ended, unless he acted first. David filed countersuit. I want custody of Chloe. I want the house, and I want a full financial audit of everything Candace has done in the past year. Blake, that's not going to work. The paternity test is just one piece of evidence. File the papers now. I'm going home to have a conversation with my wife and her boyfriend. Blake left Lisa's office with a complete dossier on Tyler Hendricks and Patricia Mills' operation. He understood their strategy, their weaknesses, and their criminal activities. More importantly, he now understood exactly how to destroy them. As he drove toward his house, toward the confrontation that would determine his daughter's future, Blake felt the familiar calm that came before a major business negotiation. Tyler and Candace thought they held all the cards, but they'd made one critical error. They'd assumed Blake Morrison would fight fair. They were about to discover that when someone threatens everything a man values, fairness becomes a luxury he can't afford. And Blake Morrison had never lost a fight when the stakes were this high. Chapter 5: The Confrontation. Blake pulled into his circular driveway at 3:47 p.m. and saw Tyler's black BMW parked brazenly next to Candace's car. Through the living room windows, he could see figures moving around inside his house. Tyler Hendricks making himself comfortable in Blake's home while planning to steal his daughter. Blake sat in his car for a moment, centering himself. This confrontation would determine everything that followed. He needed to be strategic, not emotional. He entered through the front door and heard voices from the kitchen, Candace and Tyler talking in low, conspiratorial tones. Chloe was nowhere to be seen, probably in her playroom or taking her afternoon nap. Blake walked quietly down the hallway and paused outside the kitchen, listening. Papers will be served by 6, Candace was saying. Patricia says the emergency hearing tomorrow is just a formality. Blake won't have time to mount a real defense. And the custody arrangement? Tyler's voice was casual, confident. Temporary full custody to me, with you listed as the biological father. Blake gets supervised visitation only if that. What about the house? It'll be part of the settlement. Patricia thinks we can get half the value, plus alimony and child support. With your paternity claim validated, Blake doesn't have much leverage. Blake stepped into the kitchen. Interesting theory. Both Candace and Tyler spun around, startled. Tyler recovered quickly, standing up with the kind of aggressive posture Blake had seen from men trying to intimidate their way out of bad situations. Blake, Candace said, her face flushing. We were just planning my destruction? Blake's voice was conversational, almost amused. Please, don't let me interrupt. Tyler stepped forward, flexing slightly. Look, man, this doesn't have to be complicated. Candace and I are in love. Chloe is my daughter, and it's time for everyone to accept reality. Blake studied Tyler with the same detached analysis he used when evaluating business competitors. 6'1", maybe 185 pounds, clearly spent a lot of time in the gym, but had the soft edges of someone who'd never been in a real fight. His aggressive stance was rehearsed, designed to intimidate suburban husbands during custody disputes. Reality, Blake repeated. That's an interesting word choice from someone who's been running a criminal confidence game for the past 4 years. Tyler's expression flickered. Just a moment of uncertainty before the aggressive mask returned. I don't know what you're talking about. Blake pulled out his phone and showed Tyler a photo Lisa had compiled. Tyler with Patricia Mills at a romantic dinner. Patricia Mills, your girlfriend and business partner. 7 wealthy husbands destroyed, $47 million in fraudulent settlements, and at least 1 murder when Robert Chin's wife tried to back out of your operation. The color drained from Tyler's face. Candace looked confused, glancing between the two men. Tyler, what is he talking about? Blake showed her another photo, Tyler with a different woman, then another and another. Your boyfriend has seduced at least 7 married women as part of a systematic fraud operation. You're not his lover, Candace. You're his mark. That's impossible, Candace said, but Blake could see doubt creeping into her voice. Patricia Mills represents all his victims. Tyler seduces wealthy wives, claims to be the father of their children, and Patricia Mills handles the divorce proceedings. They split the settlements and move on to the next target. Tyler's jaw clenched. You can't prove any of that. Blake smiled coldly. Actually, I can. I have surveillance footage of you with Patricia Mills, financial records showing your partnership, and witness testimony from Robert Chun about what you did to his family. Blake pulled up another photo on his phone, crime scene images from the car accident that killed Chen's wife. This is what happens when one of your victims tries to back out. Isn't it, Tyler? Tyler's carefully constructed confidence began to crack. You're insane. That was an accident. A park ranger saw you hiking near the accident site the day she died. Your cell phone pinged a tower 20 miles from where you claim to be. And there are brake marks on the road that suggest her car was deliberately forced off the cliff. Candace sank into a chair, staring at Tyler with growing horror. Tell me this isn't true. Tyler ignored her, focusing on Blake with new wariness. Even if any of that was real, it doesn't change the fact that Chloe is my daughter. I have paternity rights. Do you? Blake's smile became predatory. Because I have some interesting news about your DNA test. Blake pulled out another document, one Lisa had obtained from the lab that processed Tyler's paternity claim. Your test was processed by Northwest Genetics Labs, wasn't it? The same lab Patricia Mills uses for all her paternity cases. The same lab that's been falsifying DNA results for the past 3 years as part of your operation. Tyler's eyes widened. That's impossible. The lab technician is named Marcus Webb. Ring any bells? He's Patricia Mills' cousin, and he's been altering test results in exchange for a cut of your settlements. I have financial records showing payments from Patricia Mills to Marcus Webb totaling $300,000 over 3 years. Blake watched as Tyler's world collapsed around him. The DNA test, the cornerstone of their entire plan, was fraudulent. But that means, Candace whispered, that means Tyler Hendricks is not Chloe's biological father, Blake said. He never was. The entire paternity claim is based on fabricated evidence. Tyler lunged forward, his careful facade finally cracking completely. You son of a... Blake caught Tyler's wrist effortlessly. Despite Tyler's gym-built physique, Blake had the real strength that came from years of construction work before building his empire. More importantly, Blake had the focused violence of a man protecting his family. I wouldn't, Blake said quietly, applying pressure to Tyler's wrist until the younger man winced. Assault charges would complicate your legal situation considerably. Blake released Tyler's wrist and stepped back. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my house right now. You're going to stop all contact with my wife and daughter. And you're going to find a new line of work because your criminal operation is finished. You can't prove anything in court, Tyler said, rubbing his wrist. Blake's smile was genuinely amused now. Tyler, you still don't understand who you're dealing with. I don't need to prove anything in court. Blake pulled out his phone and showed Tyler a series of text messages. These are from your previous victims, all 7 women you've defrauded. I contacted them this morning and explained what really happened to them. They're very interested in meeting with prosecutors to discuss your criminal activities. Tyler's face went pale. They can't. They can and they will. But that's not the best part. Blake showed Tyler another document. This is a financial forensic audit of Elite Form Fitness Studio. It shows systematic money laundering, tax evasion, and fraudulent business practices. The IRS will be very interested in your creative accounting methods. But more importantly, Blake continued, I've had a very interesting conversation with Marcus Webb at Northwest Genetics Labs. When faced with federal fraud charges, he became surprisingly cooperative about his relationship with Patricia Mills. Tyler staggered backward, the full scope of his exposure becoming clear. Blake turned to Candace. As for you, you have a choice to make. You can continue with this divorce, knowing that Tyler is a criminal who is using you as part of a fraud operation. Patricia Mills will abandon you the moment her own criminal exposure becomes clear, leaving you with nothing. Or you can end this madness now. Cancel the divorce filing, sever all contact with Tyler and Patricia Mills, and we can discuss the future of our marriage. Candace looked between Blake and Tyler, seeing her lover, the man she betrayed her family for, revealed as a predator who'd manipulated her from the beginning. I need time to think, she whispered. No, Blake said firmly. You need to decide right now. Tyler is leaving this house in the next 60 seconds. The question is whether you're going with him or staying to face the consequences of what you've done to our family. Tyler straightened, tried to recover some dignity. Candace, don't listen to him. He's just trying to manipulate you. Blake laughed, a cold, genuinely amused sound. Tyler, after everything you've done, you're accusing me of manipulation? Blake pulled out his phone one more time and played a recording. It was Tyler and Patricia Mills discussing their plan to destroy Blake's family, including specific details about seducing Candace and fabricating the paternity claim. I've been recording all of your conversations for the past week, Blake explained. Your phones, your meetings, even your intimate moments with Patricia Mills. It's amazing what private investigators can accomplish when properly motivated. Tyler's legs seemed to buckle slightly. The recording was evidence of conspiracy, fraud, and criminal enterprise. Combined with the testimony from previous victims, it would destroy him completely. 50 seconds, Tyler. Tyler looked at Candace one last time, perhaps hoping she'd choose to run away with him. But Candace was staring at the floor, her world shattered by the revelation of Tyler's true nature. This isn't over, Tyler said to Blake as he headed toward the door. Blake's voice followed him. You're absolutely right, Tyler. It's not over. It's just beginning. After Tyler left, Blake and Candace sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Candace looked up at him with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Blake. I thought he loved me. Blake studied his wife. The woman who'd betrayed him, endangered their daughter, and nearly destroyed their family for a man who'd been manipulating her from the beginning. Candace, you need to understand something. Tyler being a criminal doesn't excuse what you did. You still chose to have an affair. You still chose to lie about Chloe's paternity. You still chose to plan my destruction. I know, but there are no buts. You betrayed everything we built together. Candace wiped her eyes. What happens now? Blake looked toward the staircase, knowing Chloe was somewhere upstairs, innocent of the adult manipulations that had nearly torn her world apart. Now we find out if there's anything left of our marriage worth saving. But Candace, understand this. If you ever betray me or endanger Chloe again, Tyler Hendricks' fate will seem merciful compared to what I'll do to you. Candace shivered at something she saw in Blake's eyes. Are you threatening me? I'm stating a fact. You've seen what I'm capable of when my family is threatened. Tyler thought he was smart, thought he could manipulate and destroy me. Where is he now? Outside. They heard Tyler's BMW speeding away from the house, fleeing the wreckage of his criminal enterprise. Blake stood up. Clean yourself up. We're going to have dinner as a family, and you're going to explain to me exactly how we're going to rebuild the trust you destroyed. As Candace headed upstairs, Blake's phone buzzed with a text from Lisa Park. Patricia Mills just withdrew from all active cases and is reportedly fleeing to Canada. Tyler's gym has been raided by federal agents. Marcus Webb is in custody. Blake smiled grimly. Tyler Hendricks' criminal empire was collapsing exactly as Blake had planned. But the war wasn't over yet. Tyler still had to pay for threatening Blake's daughter. And that payment would be far more personal than criminal prosecution could provide. Some debts could only be settled with blood. Chapter 6. The Hunt Begins. 3 days after Tyler's humiliating departure from Blake's house, the full scope of the criminal operation's collapse became clear. Patricia Mills had fled to Vancouver, but was arrested at the airport on federal fraud charges. Marcus Webb, the lab technician, had provided evidence in exchange for a plea deal. Elite Form Fitness Studio was seized by the IRS, leaving Tyler homeless and nearly penniless. But Blake Morrison wasn't satisfied with Tyler's financial ruin. The man had threatened Chloe, manipulated his wife, and planned to steal his family. That required a more personal response. Blake sat in his office reviewing reports from Lisa Park. Tyler had been staying at cheap motels around Seattle, burning through his remaining cash. His criminal partners had abandoned him, his assets were frozen, and his carefully constructed life was in ruins. But Tyler was also desperate, which made him dangerous. He's been asking around about guns, Miguel reported during their morning briefing. Nothing traceable, but he's looking for protection or planning something stupid. Where is he now? Motel 6 in Renton. Room 237. Hasn't left in 18 hours except for food runs. Blake studied surveillance photos of Tyler, unshaven, paranoid, constantly looking over his shoulder. The confident predator who'd invaded Blake's home had been reduced to a frightened animal. Any contact with Candace? None. She's been home with Chloe. Hasn't left the property since Tuesday. Blake's relationship with his wife remained in limbo. Candace had agreed to cancel the divorce proceedings and sever all contact with Tyler and Patricia Mills. But the betrayal hung between them like a toxic cloud. They were civil for Chloe's sake, but the marriage Blake had thought he knew was gone. What mattered now was ensuring Tyler could never threaten his family again. Blake's phone rang. David Kim, his attorney. Blake, we have a problem. Tyler Hendricks has retained new counsel, Jimmy Morrison from the Public Defender's Office. So, Morrison is pushing for a plea deal in exchange for testimony about your illegal surveillance activities. Tyler is claiming you violated his privacy rights, that your evidence was obtained illegally. Blake felt a moment of cold amusement. Tyler's trying to turn the tables. It gets worse. He's also filed a restraining order claiming you've been harassing and threatening him. If granted, you can't go within 500 feet of Tyler or any property he occupies. When's the hearing? Tomorrow morning. Blake, if this restraining order goes through, it could complicate everything. The criminal charges against Tyler might be dismissed if his lawyer can prove prosecutorial misconduct based on illegally obtained evidence. After hanging up, Blake called Lisa Park. Lisa, I need to know everything about Jimmy Morrison, Tyler's new lawyer. Already on it. Morrison is clean, public defender for 8 years, good reputation, no obvious corruption. But Blake, he's also competent. If Tyler's claiming harassment, Morrison might be able to make it stick. Blake understood the strategy. Tyler couldn't win a direct fight, so he was trying to use the legal system to neutralize Blake's advantages. If the restraining order was granted, it would give Tyler breathing room to plan his next move. Blake wouldn't allow that to happen. Miguel, I want Tyler under constant surveillance. If he meets with anyone, goes anywhere unusual, or does anything that looks like planning, I want to know immediately. Already on it, boss. But Blake, if there's a restraining order, then we'll have to be more creative. That evening, Blake sat in Chloe's room reading her bedtime story. She curled against him, trusting and innocent, unaware of the war being fought around her. As he read about brave princesses and defeated dragons, Blake felt his resolve crystallize. Tyler Hendricks would never be allowed to threaten this moment again. After Chloe fell asleep, Blake went to his home office and made a call to an unlisted number. Vincent, it's Blake Morrison. Vincent Torino owned a construction supply company that provided materials for Morrison Holdings projects. He also provided other services for Blake when situations required solutions outside normal business channels. Blake, been a while. What do you need? I have a problem that requires a personal touch. Someone threatened my family. I see. Where and when? I'll text you details. But Vincent, this needs to look natural. An accident. Understood. What's the timeline? Soon. Before he can cause more damage. After ending the call, Blake felt the familiar calm that came with decisive action. Tyler had chosen to escalate their conflict by involving lawyers and restraining orders. But Tyler didn't understand that Blake Morrison played by different rules when his family was threatened. The next morning, Blake attended the restraining order hearing. Jimmy Morrison presented Tyler's case competently, claiming Blake had engaged in systematic harassment through surveillance, intimidation, and threats. Your Honor, Morrison argued, my client has been subjected to round-the-clock stalking by Mr. Blake Morrison's private security team. Mr. Hendricks fears for his safety and requests court protection. Blake's lawyer countered that Tyler was a criminal who defrauded Blake's family and posed an ongoing threat, but the judge seemed sympathetic to Tyler's claims. Mr. Morrison, the judge said to Blake, while I understand your anger about what happened to your family, you cannot take the law into your own hands. I'm granting a temporary restraining order requiring you to maintain a distance of 500 feet from Mr. Hendricks and cease all surveillance activities. Blake accepted the ruling with apparent grace, but he was already implementing his alternative plan. That afternoon, Tyler left his motel and drove to a gun shop in Tacoma. Miguel, maintaining surveillance from a safe distance, watched Tyler purchase a .38 revolver and ammunition. The purchase was legal. Tyler had no criminal convictions yet, and Washington State's background check system hadn't been updated with his pending charges. He's armed now, Miguel reported to Blake. Seems more confident, like he's planning something. What did he go after buying the gun? Drove around your neighborhood for an hour, checking security, looking for patterns. I think he's planning to come after you or your family. Blake felt cold satisfaction. Tyler's purchase of a weapon would justify everything that happened next. That evening, Blake received a call from Vincent Torino. It's done. Your problem will be resolved tomorrow morning. What kind of accident? Mechanical failure. Brake lines on his BMW. Very natural, very clean. Blake ended the call and poured himself scotch. Tomorrow, Tyler Hendricks would discover the final lesson Blake Morrison taught to men who threatened his family. But Blake's phone rang before he could finish his drink. Miguel, his voice urgent. Boss, Tyler's not at his motel. I lost him 2 hours ago, and his BMW is gone. Where? Blake's blood went cold as he heard a sound from upstairs. Glass breaking in Chloe's room. He's here, Blake said, dropping the phone and reaching for the gun he kept in his desk drawer. Tyler Hendricks had come for Blake's family, armed and desperate. But Tyler was about to learn that Blake Morrison had been preparing for this moment since their first confrontation. The hunt was over. Now came the kill. Chapter 7. The final confrontation. Blake moved silently through his house, gun drawn, every sense heightened. The sound of breaking glass had come from the second floor, near Chloe's room. His heart hammered as he climbed the stairs, knowing that Tyler was somewhere above him, armed and desperate enough to invade Blake's home. The hallway was dark except for a sliver of light under Chloe's door. Blake approached carefully, noting that the guest bedroom window at the end of the hall was shattered, Tyler's entry point. Blake tested Chloe's door handle, locked from the inside. Smart girl. He taught her to lock her door if she ever heard strange noises at night. A floorboard creaked behind him. Blake spun around to see Tyler emerging from the master bedroom, holding his .38 revolver with shaking hands. Tyler looked wild, unshaven, red-eyed, and past the point of rational decision-making. Hello, Blake, Tyler said, his voice hoarse. Time for a conversation. Blake kept his own weapon lowered, but ready. You made a mistake coming here, Tyler. Did I? Because it seems like I hold all the cards now. Tyler gestured with the gun toward the stairs. Let's go downstairs, away from the kid. Blake calculated distances and angles. Tyler was about 15 feet away, nervous and clearly inexperienced with firearms. His grip was wrong, his stance was unstable, and his finger was on the trigger, dangerous but also likely to miss if he fired in panic. Where's Candace? Blake asked, moving slowly toward the stairs. Locked in the bathroom downstairs. Don't worry, she's fine. For now. They descended the stairs together, Tyler keeping the gun trained on Blake's back. In the living room, Blake could hear muffled sounds from the powder room. Candace calling for help through the locked door. Sit down, Tyler ordered, pointing to the leather chair where Blake often read evening reports. Blake sat but kept his gun concealed beside his leg. What do you want, Tyler? What I want? Tyler laughed bitterly. I want my life back. I want the business you destroyed, the money you cost me, the future you stole. You did that to yourself when you chose to run a criminal operation. Criminal operation? Tyler's eyes blazed. You think you're so much better than me? You think your money makes you righteous? Tyler began pacing, the gun wavering as his emotions overwhelmed his limited self-control. I worked for everything I had, Tyler continued. You were just born lucky, inherited everything from Daddy's construction company. Blake almost smiled. Tyler's research had been as flawed as everything else about his operation. I built Morrison Holdings from nothing, Tyler. I started with a single bulldozer and a $50,000 loan. Bullshit. My father was a drunk who lost his construction business when I was 16. I've been working since I was 14, concrete, framing, roofing, anything that paid. I built my company with my own hands and my own blood. Blake could see his words affecting Tyler, undermining the narrative Tyler had built to justify his criminal activities. That doesn't change anything, Tyler said. but his voice lacked conviction. You still destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life when you chose to be a predator instead of a man. Tyler's face flushed with rage. You want to talk about being a man? A real man doesn't hide behind lawyers and private investigators. A real man faces his enemies directly. Is that what you think you're doing here? Being a man. Blake slowly stood up, his gun still concealed. Tyler raised his weapon, but didn't fire. He wanted to talk, to justify his actions, to make Blake understand his twisted logic. I loved Candace, Tyler said. I really loved her. Not like you, treating her like another business asset. I made her feel alive again. You made her feel like a mark in your confidence game. That's not true. Then why are you here with a gun instead of trying to win her back with love? Tyler's hand shook as the contradiction hit him. If he truly loved Candace, breaking into Blake's house to threaten his family was hardly romantic. Because you poisoned her against me, Tyler said, but his voice was weaker now. You made her think I was using her. I showed her the truth. Your relationship with Patricia Mills, your previous victims, your criminal enterprise. Candace made her choice based on facts, not manipulation. Tyler's face crumpled slightly. For a moment, Blake saw past the desperate criminal to the pathetic man underneath. Someone who'd spent years lying to others and himself about what he really was. But that moment of sympathy vanished when Tyler's expression hardened again. It doesn't matter anymore, Tyler said. You destroyed everything I cared about. Now I'm going to return the favor. Tyler raised the gun toward Blake's chest, his finger tightening on the trigger. Blake moved. Years of construction work had given Blake reflexes and strength that Tyler's gym workouts couldn't match. Blake dove sideways, bringing up his own weapon as Tyler fired. The shot went wide, splintering the wall behind where Blake had been sitting. Blake rolled behind the couch as Tyler fired again, this shot smashing a lamp. Tyler, Blake called out. This ends badly for you no matter what happens. Put the gun down and walk away. Tyler's response was another wild shot that destroyed a family photo on the mantelpiece. Blake analyzed the situation. Tyler was panicking, firing randomly, and would soon run out of ammunition. But each shot risked hitting Candace in the bathroom or Chloe upstairs. Blake made his decision. He stood up from behind the couch, his gun aimed directly at Tyler's center mass. Drop your weapon. Tyler spun toward him, bringing his gun up desperately. But Tyler was an amateur facing a man who'd learned to shoot in the Marines and practiced regularly at private ranges. Blake's shot was precise and final. Tyler Hendricks dropped to Blake's hardwood floor, his gun clattering away, blood pooling beneath him. His eyes were wide with shock and pain, but still alive. Blake approached carefully, kicking Tyler's gun out of reach. Tyler tried to speak, but could only make gurgling sounds. You threatened my daughter, Blake said quietly, standing over the dying man. That was unforgivable. Tyler's eyes fixed on Blake's face, perhaps finally understanding the type of man he'd chosen as an enemy. Then his eyes went blank. Blake checked Tyler's pulse to be certain, then called 911. This is Blake Morrison at 15847 Bellevue Hills Drive. I've just shot an armed intruder who broke into my home and threatened my family. The threat has been neutralized. Blake unlocked the powder room door, releasing Candace, who collapsed into his arms sobbing. Then he went upstairs to check on Chloe, who was still locked safely in her room. Daddy. Chloe's voice was small and frightened through the door. It's okay, princess. The bad man is gone. You can come out now. When police arrived, they found Blake holding his daughter while Candace sat in shock on the living room sofa, carefully positioned so she couldn't see Tyler's body. The investigation was straightforward. Tyler had broken into Blake's home, armed with an illegal weapon. The restraining order made his presence criminal and threatened Blake's family. Blake had acted in self-defense to protect his wife and daughter. The responding officer was Sergeant Maria Santos, a 20-year veteran who'd worked dozens of home invasion cases. Mr. Morrison, can you walk me through what happened? Blake provided a clear, factual account of Tyler's invasion and threats. The physical evidence supported his story: broken window, Tyler's gun, multiple bullet holes showing Tyler had fired first. Any idea why this man targeted your family? Tyler Hendricks was involved in a criminal operation that defrauded my family. He was facing federal charges and apparently blamed me for his legal troubles. Sergeant Santos examined Tyler's body and the crime scene. Clean shooting, Mr. Morrison. Definitely self-defense. As paramedics removed Tyler's body and crime scene technicians processed the evidence, Blake sat with Chloe and Candace in the kitchen. His daughter had recovered quickly. At 4 years old, she didn't fully understand what had happened, only that Daddy had protected them from a bad man. Candace was struggling more. She kept staring at the living room where Tyler had died, perhaps finally understanding the full scope of what her affair had cost. "Is it over?" she asked Blake quietly. Blake looked at his wife. The woman who'd betrayed him, endangered their daughter, and nearly destroyed their family. Tyler's death had ended the immediate threat, but it hadn't healed the deeper wounds. "Tyler's dead," Blake said. "His criminal operation is finished. Patricia Mills and Marcus Webb are facing federal charges. So yes, that part is over. And us." Blake studied Candace's face. She looked older, worn down by guilt and trauma. The confident woman who'd planned his destruction just days ago had been replaced by someone broken and uncertain. "That depends on you, Candace. Tyler manipulated you, but you still chose to betray our family. That's not something I can just forgive and forget." "I know, but Blake, I want to try. I want to rebuild what we had." Blake looked at Chloe, who was coloring at the kitchen table, humming quietly to herself. Whatever happened between him and Candace, his daughter deserved stability and love. "We'll see," Blake said. "But Candace, understand this. I will never trust you the way I did before. You've shown me who you really are when tested. I won't forget that." Candace nodded, tears in her eyes. "I understand." 3 hours later, after police finished their investigation and the house was quiet again, Blake sat in his office reviewing the events of the past week. Tyler Hendricks was dead, his criminal operation destroyed, and Blake's family was safe. But as Blake looked at photos of happier times with Candace and Chloe, he realized that some victories came at a cost that could never be fully calculated. Tyler had lost his life, but Blake had lost something too. The innocence of believing his family was secure, the trust that his wife would choose him over temptation, and the simple peace of a life without enemies. Still, as Blake listened to Chloe's laughter from the playroom upstairs, he knew he'd made the right choices. His daughter was safe, his enemies were defeated, and his empire remained intact. In the end, that was what mattered most. Some men built legacies through conquest and destruction. Blake Morrison built his through protection and ruthless defense of everything he valued. And anyone who threatened that legacy learned, as Tyler Hendricks had learned, that Blake Morrison's mercy had limits, but his vengeance did not. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. 2 weeks after Tyler Hendricks died on Blake's living room floor, the full consequences of their war began to emerge. The police investigation had cleared Blake of any wrongdoing. Justified self-defense was the official ruling. But the ripple effects of Tyler's criminal operation continued to spread through Seattle's legal and social circles. Blake sat in his attorney David Kim's office reviewing the final reports from Lisa Park's investigation. Patricia Mills had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering. Marcus Webb received 5 years for falsifying DNA tests. 7 previous victims of their operation were filing civil suits against Tyler's estate, though there was little money left to recover. "The interesting development," David said, "is that 3 of Tyler's previous victims have reached out to thank you personally." Blake looked up from the reports. "Thank me?" "Robert Chin's brother flew in from San Francisco yesterday. Apparently, your investigation into Tyler's operation finally gave him closure about his sister-in-law's death. The other victims feel vindicated that Tyler faced consequences for what he did to their families." Blake felt no satisfaction from Tyler's death. Killing another man, even in self-defense, wasn't something to celebrate. But he was glad that Tyler's other victims had found some measure of justice. What about the federal investigation? Closed. FBI concluded that Tyler acted alone after his criminal operation collapsed. No evidence of outside conspiracy or ongoing threats. Blake nodded. Tyler's death had ended more than just his life. It had eliminated the entire criminal network that had destroyed multiple families. And Candace? David's expression became more guarded. She's agreed to continue marriage counseling, but Blake, you need to understand that rebuilding trust after betrayal this deep, it may not be possible. Blake had been attending weekly counseling sessions with Candace, trying to salvage their marriage for Chloe's sake. But every session reinforced the fundamental truth. Candace had chosen to betray him when faced with temptation. That choice revealed something about her character that couldn't be erased or forgotten. Blake left David's office and drove to Morrison Holdings headquarters in downtown Seattle. He'd been away from daily operations for 2 weeks, and there were critical decisions waiting for his attention. But as he sat in his corner office overlooking Elliott Bay, Blake found himself thinking about the price of the war he'd won. Tyler Hendricks was dead, but Blake's marriage was destroyed. His family was safe, but the trust that had held them together was gone. He'd protected his empire, but at the cost of becoming a killer. Blake's assistant knocked on his office door. "Mr. Morrison, there's someone here to see you. Says it's personal." "Who is it?" "Robert Chun, from San Francisco." Blake had Robert Chun shown into his office. Chun was a man in his early 40s, well-dressed, but with the tired eyes of someone who'd endured profound loss. "Mr. Morrison, thank you for seeing me. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did." Blake gestured for Chun to sit. "I'm sorry for your loss. Your sister-in-law didn't deserve what happened to her. Jennifer was trying to protect our family when she died. Tyler Hendricks had convinced my brother that their marriage was over, that their son wasn't his. Jennifer discovered the truth about Tyler's operation and was going to expose him." Chin's voice was steady, but Blake could see the pain underneath. "Jennifer called me the night before she died. Said she found evidence that would destroy Tyler and Patricia Mills. She was driving to meet with FBI agents when her car went off that mountain road. I'm sorry the legal system failed her. But you didn't," Chun said. "When Tyler threatened your family, you did what needed to be done. Jennifer would have appreciated that." After Chun left, Blake sat alone in his office thinking about justice and revenge, protection and destruction. Tyler Hendricks had been a predator who destroyed families for profit. His death had saved Blake's family and provided closure for his previous victims. But it had also changed Blake in ways he was still understanding. That evening, Blake returned home to find Candace and Chloe in the kitchen making dinner. The scene looked normal, a family preparing to share a meal together. But Blake could feel the underlying tension, the careful politeness that had replaced genuine intimacy. "How was your day, Daddy?" Chloe asked, hugging his legs. "Good, Princess. How was yours?" "Mommy and I went to the park, and I fed the ducks." Blake looked at Candace, who managed to smile. "She had a good time." "We both did." During dinner, they maintained the facade of a normal family. Chloe chattered about her day. Candace asked about Blake's work, and Blake responded appropriately. But underneath the surface, all three of them knew that everything had changed. After Chloe went to bed, Blake and Candace sat in the living room, carefully avoiding the area where Tyler had died, which had been professionally cleaned but still felt contaminated to both of them. "Blake, I've been thinking about what Dr. Peterson said in counseling," Candace began hesitantly. Dr. Peterson was their marriage counselor, a woman who specialized in rebuilding relationships after major betrayals. About whether we're staying together for the right reasons, or just because it's easier than facing the truth. Blake studied his wife's face. Over the past 2 weeks, he'd watched her struggle with guilt, trauma, and the realization that her affair had nearly cost Chloe her safety. What truth is that? That maybe we can't come back from this. That maybe try to rebuild our marriage is just postponing the inevitable. Blake felt a mixture of relief and sadness. He'd been thinking the same thing, but hadn't wanted to be the first to voice it. "You want a divorce? I want us to be honest about whether love and trust can survive what I did." "And Blake, I see how you look at me now. There's something cold there that wasn't there before." Blake couldn't deny it. When he looked at Candace, he saw not just his wife, but the woman who'd betrayed him, endangered their daughter, and planned his destruction. That knowledge colored every interaction, every conversation, every moment they shared. What about Chloe? She needs parents who can give her love and stability. Maybe that means divorced parents who coexist peacefully rather than married parents who resent each other. Blake stood up and walked to the window overlooking the backyard where Chloe played every day. The playground equipment he'd installed, the garden Candace had planted, the life they'd built together, all of it felt like artifact from a different family's existence. If we divorce, Blake said, I want joint custody. 50-50 times sharing. Of course. Blake, despite everything that's happened, I know you're a good father. Chloe needs you. Blake turned back to face Candace. And I want us to handle this privately. No lawyers beyond what's necessary for paperwork. No fighting over assets or support. We divide everything fairly and move on. Agreed. They spent the next hour discussing practical arrangements with surprising civility. Blake would keep the house. Candace would take the condo in Belltown they'd bought as an investment. They'd alternate weeks with Chloe, share holidays, and maintain college funds and insurance policies. It felt like negotiating a business deal rather than ending a marriage. Blake, Candace said as they finished the discussion, I need you to know that I loved you. I still love you. Tyler manipulated me, but that doesn't excuse the choices I made. I know. Do you think you can ever forgive me? Blake considered the question carefully. I can forgive you for making a mistake, for being manipulated, for falling for Tyler's lies. But I can't forgive you for endangering Chloe. That choice revealed something about your character that I can't unsee. Candace nodded, tears in her eyes. I understand. But Candace, for Chloe's sake, we're going to be cordial co-parents. Whatever anger I have toward you stays between us. Our daughter deserves better than parents who hate each other. Thank you. 3 months later, Blake signed the final divorce papers in David Kim's office. The process had been remarkably amicable. No contested assets, no custody battles, no public drama. They'd even attended Chloe's preschool graduation together, sitting side by side and applauding their daughter's achievements. But as Blake drove away from the law office, officially single for the first time in 8 years, he felt not relief, but a profound sense of completion. The war that had begun with Tyler's criminal operation was finally, truly over. Blake had protected his daughter, defeated his enemies, and secured his empire. The cost had been his marriage, his innocence, and one man's life. But as he picked up Chloe for his first official week of joint custody, watching her face light up with joy at seeing him, Blake knew he'd made the right choices. Some wars were worth fighting, regardless of the cost. And Blake Morrison had one. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 1 year after Tyler Hendricks died in Blake's living room, Blake stood in the same spot where the confrontation had occurred, but the house felt completely different. Gone were the family photos that had included Candace, replaced by pictures of Blake and Chloe on their adventures together. The formal living room had been converted into a playroom where 5-year-old Chloe could spread out her art projects and toys. Blake had rebuilt his life with the same methodical precision he used for his construction projects. Joint custody with Candace worked smoothly. They'd learned to communicate about Chloe's needs without the underlying tension that had poisoned their marriage. Candace had moved on as well, dating a pediatrician she'd met through Chloe's school, someone who seemed genuinely kind and stable. Daddy, look what I made. Chloe ran into the room, carrying a drawing of what appeared to be a castle with stick figures. That's beautiful, princess. Tell me about it. It's our house, and this is you, and this is me, and this is Miguel. She pointed to the various stick figures with elaborate explanations. Blake smiled at the inclusion of Miguel, his head of security, who'd become something of an uncle figure to Chloe. Miguel's presence had been essential during the transition period, helping maintain security and stability while Blake navigated single parenthood. Mr. Morrison? Miguel appeared in the doorway. Lisa Park is here for your meeting. Blake had been expecting Lisa. Today marked the first anniversary of Tyler's death, and Blake had commissioned a final report on the lasting effects of their investigation. Lisa entered the playroom with a thick folder, but her expression was lighter than Blake had seen in months. Good news, Blake asked as Chloe returned to her coloring. The best. Patricia Mills was found dead in federal prison yesterday. Apparent suicide, but the inmates I spoke with suggested it was more complicated than that. Prison justice for someone who destroyed families. Blake felt no satisfaction from Patricia Mills' death, but he understood the poetic justice. She'd spent her career destroying families for profit and ultimately faced consequences from people who valued family loyalty above all else. What about the other victims? All 7 families are doing well. Robert Chin remarried last month, a woman who lost her husband to cancer, and they're blending their families together. The other couples either reconciled after learning the truth about Tyler's manipulation or divorced amicably once they understood what really happened. Lisa pulled out another document. But the most interesting development is this. She handed Blake a letter from the FBI's white-collar crime division. They're offering you a consulting contract. Your investigation into Tyler's operation was more thorough than anything they could have produced. They want your expertise for similar cases. Blake read the letter with interest. The FBI was offering him a significant consulting fee to help investigate other confidence operations that targeted wealthy families. Are you interested? Blake considered the offer. His construction business ran smoothly without his daily oversight, and he discovered an aptitude for investigation and justice that went beyond protecting his own family. I'll think about it. After Lisa left, Blake spent the afternoon with Chloe in their backyard. She was riding her bicycle while he watched, marveling at how quickly she'd grown and adapted to their new life. The trauma of that night a year ago seemed to have left no lasting effects on her. Children were remarkably resilient when surrounded by love and stability. That evening, as Blake tucked Chloe into bed, she asked a question that caught him off guard. "Daddy, do you miss Mommy?" Blake considered how to answer honestly, but age-appropriately. "I miss the family we used to be, Princess, but I'm happy with the family we are now." "Me too. I like having 2 houses and 2 bedrooms and seeing you and Mommy separately sometimes." Blake smiled at her pragmatic acceptance of their arrangement. "Why is that?" "Because you and Mommy are happier now. And when grown-ups are happier, kids are happier too." Blake was struck by her wisdom. Out of the mouths of babes, Chloe had understood something that had taken him months to accept. Their family was different now, but it was also healthier. After Chloe fell asleep, Blake sat in his home office reviewing the FBI's offer. Taking the consulting contract would mean using his skills to help other families threatened by predators like Tyler Hendricks. It would also mean potentially dangerous work, but Blake had already proven he could handle such dangers. His phone rang. Vincent Torino, the man who'd helped arrange Tyler's accident that never happened. "Blake, just wanted to check in. Everything's still quiet on your end?" "Completely quiet, Vincent. Thanks for your concern. Good to hear. You know, word gets around about what happened to that Tyler character. People respect a man who protects his family properly." After hanging up, Blake reflected on the strange path his life had taken. A year ago, he'd been a successful businessman with what seemed like a perfect family. Now he was a divorced single father who'd killed a man in self-defense and was being recruited by the FBI. But despite everything that had changed, Blake felt more grounded than he had in years. He knew exactly who he was now, a man who protected what mattered most, regardless of the cost. Blake's computer chimed with an email from David Kim. The final financial audit of Tyler's criminal operation had been completed. Blake and the other victims would recover approximately 60% of their losses through asset forfeiture and insurance claims. But more importantly, the audit had uncovered evidence of additional crimes that would help prosecute other members of Tyler's network who were still alive. Justice would continue to roll out in waves, affecting criminals Blake had never even known existed. Blake printed the FBI's consulting offer and signed it. He'd found his new purpose, using the skills he'd developed protecting his own family to help protect others. As he prepared for bed, Blake walked through his house, checking locks and security systems out of habit. In Chloe's room, he paused to watch her sleep peacefully, surrounded by stuffed animals and night lights. This was what mattered. This was what he'd fought for and killed for and rebuilt his life around. His daughter's safety, her happiness, her future. Tyler Hendricks had threatened that future and paid with his life. Candace had betrayed that future and lost her marriage. Patricia Mills had profited from destroying such futures and died in prison. But Blake Morrison had protected what he valued most, and tomorrow he would help others do the same. Some men built legacies through conquest. Others built them through protection. Blake Morrison had learned the difference, and he would spend the rest of his life ensuring that predators like Tyler Hendricks never again threatened innocent families. As he turned off the lights and headed to his own room, Blake felt the deep satisfaction of a man who'd faced his worst fears and emerged victorious. He'd lost a wife, but gained clarity about what really mattered. He'd killed an enemy, but saved his daughter. He destroyed a criminal operation, but found his true calling. In the end, the hand sign that had started everything, Chloe's silent plea for help during that video call, had led Blake to discover not just his enemies, but himself. And Blake Morrison liked the man he'd become. Harder, perhaps. More dangerous, certainly. But also more focused on what truly mattered in life. His daughter slept safely down the hall, and that was enough. Everything else was just details. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.